Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Today, I want to do a couple things while you're here. And Dr. Sad and I briefly chatted a little bit last evening to kind of leave you with some thoughts, and as well to kind of encourage and challenge you to think certainly outside of the borders of perhaps your own boroughs, your own state, your own city, and contemplate the fact that here on the United States, North American continent, exist people indigenous to this land who existed when the Mayflower arrived, when the people who came from all the European states and from all continents here to this land came to a place that was already preoccupied. So oftentimes when we talk about Columbus, there is a varying degree of thought and consideration as to exactly who discovered who. And that's a thought and consideration because in the American Indian community, we oftentimes take the Columbus Day off and we sit around and contemplate ourselves and, well, who visited him? Who was actually there at the shore when Columbus arrived to say hello? So that's a thought and contemplation. The other thing I want to kind of offer with you today and challenge you to consider is the contemplation of your own traditions, and as well the technologies and the advancements of science, technology, engineering, and math, the STEM fields, and how that relates to you, both where you're from, but also where you're going. In the background of my first slide here, you actually see a very simple looking wall. Yet this wall is in an ancient place. This wall is 3,000 years old, and it is a location in New Mexico called Chaco Canyon. This wall was architected, engineered, built, and still exists today as a piece of revitalized stonework that actually has gradient levels. They built it 4 stories in height. And in the heyday of the Chaco Canyon era, there were close to 10,000 people who lived in these great homes that were within 1/10 of 1 degree aligned north, south, east, west axis. Some of the very walls that existed in the Chaco Canyons themselves, you could look and see on the winter solstice on the 21st of December, the sun rise literally in correct and absolute alignment with one wall on the end of Chaco and actually end at sunset. On the other end of a huge, vast area covering miles and miles, and there on another side of the wall, the sun set. The Northern Star and various other celestial constellations arriving in certain particular walls and literal niches, windows that existed out to the celestial worlds. Our people as Native Indians were engineers. They were astrophysicists in sort of ways and concepts. They were designers. They were builders. They were the scientists, the best and finest. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that particular concept. Oops, now I just, there we go. I'm Eastern Band of Cherokee from North Carolina. Many of you have heard of perhaps the word Cherokee Indian. That is actually a misnomer. Cherokee is not a word that exists in our language. The closest word in the Cherokee language is called Chaneque, which just means a huge big watering hole. In our language, the way we call ourselves and our people is called the Ania'mina'i people, or the people of principle. And the way we would speak to you, as we would say, and today you're going to learn a few Cherokee words, is we'd say, Osio, da Jesu, ada Iminagigia, Oste, Aniwei. That language is ancient, thousands of years old. A language that is spoken from the Appalachians all the way up into Canada and all the way down into the northern parts of Georgia. I also have my electrical engineering degree, so I can speak and articulate all these technologies that we've been having fun with today. And I have been holding myself back from wanting to come down here and jump on this keyboard and fix things. But I know also that we have a lot of other folks that are behind us, supporting us, and these technologies are unique, and the variables and the connections and the port counts and all the algorithms of the technology and software language that go between the various locations is phenomenal. worlds of technology. Those that are in the medical sciences now, something to consider is certainly the fields of telemedicine and the advancements of being able to take, your type of field, your actual field data from a particular patient and to be able to send it across wirelessly back to a location where you can be able to do perhaps even a remote dialysis station and then be able to take the patient's records and push them back and forth. Also, when you're talking about ambulatory services that are out on large rural areas, especially in the western part of the United States, is to be able to pull medical records down to the ambulatory services and actually place them on tablets inside of the ambulance so that professional and emergency services can actually be performed on the patient, but also with the correct and adequate dosages. All of those thoughts and concepts are advancement of world of engineering and technologies, especially with electronics. That's another language that I learned to speak. Federal mediation. When you sit down with people, and oftentimes you might have a dispute. There might be a dispute, especially in research, where you simply say, well, I have a particular concept, or I need to also prove a theory, something that I've worked up inside of the laboratory itself. I want to really sit down and argue my point, and I think I have discovered something new. That ability to actually sit down in a very patient sense with your fellow colleagues and actually look at each other and say, well, here's my thoughts and opinions on this, and this is my ideas. And these are new concepts. I understand this, and please be abstract because this is new. It's advanced. We can't think on our old basis of thought. And then the other person says, well, here's all the basis of science and research and everything that says that your abstract is inaccurate, but I'm going to challenge this. That's a mediated process, a dialogue between two people. And the comforting thought that you can have, and I will challenge you as students in it, and especially going to these advanced studies, especially in the medical fields, is to consider that that is the breakthroughs. Those are the mavericks. Those are the cures to those things, especially in the fields that you have chosen, because you're going to challenge the old norms. And then I've been a member of this ACES that she mentioned, American Indian Science and Engineering Society, and I've been part of that for over 20 years. I too struggled when I started off in college, and I kind of got the idea of it and the understanding, but kind of the precepts and kind of getting all the formulae together and getting them to work in my mind had a little bit of difficulty. I met a man who happened to be Comanche Indian, an elder in our community, and he sat me down and he said, by the way, Andrew, take a look at it and think of it in this way. And he logically drew it out for me. And it made a lot more sense. And he says, you can do it. Be bold, I challenge you. I also had a good friend who was a mentor. She recently passed away at 99 years old. She was the first American Indian woman engineer in the country. Her name was Mary Ross. And she worked on the Saturn rocket programs with Lockheed Martin. Mary Ross would oftentimes just listen to me rant and rave about school and class and my latest and hardest and most difficult subject of math. And yet she could make math just seem delicate to dance in my mind and thoughts when I sat and listened to her. These people who meant something to me, the Comanches, the Cherokees, the Kiowas, the Onondagas, the Cayugas, the Senecas, the Iroquois people, there are 650 tribal communities. Some of us call ourselves nations, some of us call ourselves tribes, some of us call ourselves pueblos. Those communities range all over the United States. Some of them have land bases that are less than a few acres in size. Some of them amass over the corners of the 4 states in the west of Colorado, Utah, Arizona, New Mexico. They're called the Navajo. Our tribes and our people have existed before the Constitution of the United States. Our people, the Cherokee people, actually had treaties with the kings of Spain, France, and England 200 years before the Constitution was written. One of the unique things about Indian tribes, and this is something often to consider when you get an opportunity to travel out west and to visit with Native peoples, is that there are 3 distinct bodies of people in the United States that are written